Have you ever woken up from a dream, your heart heavy with the memory of someone who has passed on? In that fleeting moment you might wonder, what does it mean? Why do these loved ones return in our dreams after they have left this world? Could it be that they are trying to reach us from beyond, offering guidance, comfort, or warning? C.S. Lewis, in his Reflections on Grief, believed that these dreams are more than just memories. They are spiritual messages, a reminder that even death cannot sever the bond of love. Dreams of the departed are not mere fantasies, but profound connections between our world and the spiritual realm. Welcome to C.S. Lewis. Here, you will discover the path to a deeper and more meaningful relationship with God. Before we continue, please remember to subscribe below to stay up to date with our latest videos. Every subscribe, like, and comment helps us keep the C.S. Lewis channel going. Now, keep listening. When we dream of someone who has passed away, it is easy to dismiss it as simply a product of our subconscious mind. Perhaps we are grieving, and our minds, unable to cope with loss, simply conjure up images of those we've loved and lost. But C.S. Lewis would encourage us to look deeper, to open our hearts to the possibility that these dreams are not just figments of our imagination, but real spiritual experiences. Moments where the veil between this world and the next is thin, and the souls of those we loved may be trying to reach us. In his work, A Grief Observed, Lewis reflects on his own intense grief following the death of his wife, Joy. He wrestled with his sorrow, unsure if the pain would ever cease. But in the midst of this sorrow, he also experienced something remarkable: dreams of his wife. These dreams, he came to believe, were not merely expressions of his mourning, but could also be spiritual messages from the other side. In The Problem of Pain, Lewis speaks of the dream world as a realm in which the divine can reach us in our most vulnerable states. When we face deep pain or grief, our hearts are wide open, and it is in these moments that we are most receptive to God's voice. But as Lewis suggests, God does not always speak through words. Sometimes he speaks through dreams, through the continued presence of loved ones who have passed away. Lewis saw the bonds of love as unbreakable, even by death. When we dream of someone who has gone, it may be a sign that their soul is still connected to ours in some mysterious, yet powerful way. Perhaps they have returned to reassure us, to offer peace, or even to warn us about something important. It is, according to Lewis, a reminder that death does not break the thread of love. Our loved ones, though physically absent, can still be with us spiritually, offering comfort or wisdom when we need it most. We must, however, approach these dreams with care and discernment. Not every dream is meant to be interpreted in the same way, but there are ways to open ourselves to their true meaning. Lewis advises that, when we dream of someone who has passed away, we should not simply brush it aside. We should reflect on it, pray about it, and seek understanding. Sometimes these dreams are responses to our own prayers. Sometimes they are reminders that our loved ones are at peace. And sometimes they are warnings or signs, alerts that we are about to face a difficult decision, or that there is something we need to pay attention to in our lives. Consider the case of a woman named Teresa, who had a recurring dream of her grandmother. In the dream, her grandmother was always in a beautiful, peaceful garden, surrounded by flowers. She was calm and serene, her presence exuding a sense of peace. At first, Teresa was confused by the dream. What could it mean? But after praying for guidance, she realized that the dream was not just a memory, but a message. Her grandmother, in a peaceful garden, was bringing her reassurance. She was offering comfort during a time when Teresa needed it most. This is the kind of dream Lewis describes. Describes a message from beyond, not to be ignored, but to be understood, to be cherished, and to be acted upon. These dreams, he believed, could offer us more than just comfort. They could guide us in moments of indecision, help us navigate the difficult choices that life presents, and even protect us from harm. But how do we know what these dreams mean? How do we discern whether they are simply our subconscious minds working through grief, or if they are indeed messages from beyond? Lewis would advise us to look for patterns, to consider the emotional tone of the dream, and to pray for clarity. Was the person in the dream happy or sad? Did they seem at peace, or were they trying to convey something urgent? When we dream of someone who has passed away, we must ask ourselves, what is the message they are trying to share with us? If the dream is filled with peace, perhaps it is a reminder that our loved one is at rest. If the dream feels urgent, it may be a call to pay attention to something in our life, something that requires our action or reflection. In every case, Lewis encourages us to respond thoughtfully. We should not rush to dismiss the dream, nor should we rush to interpret it on our own. We should pray for guidance, seek the counsel of others, and remain open to the possibility that these dreams are not merely random occurrences, but spiritual messages, carrying the wisdom and love of those who have gone before us. In many ways, we often think of the world of the dead as distant and unreachable, a place where our loved ones remain beyond our reach. But C.S. Lewis, in his profound understanding of the spiritual world, believed that the bonds of love were never broken by death. Death, though final in one sense, does not sever the threads that connect us to those we care about. Instead, these bonds transcend earthly existence, reaching into the spiritual realm. Dreams about those who have passed on are, in this way, more than mere echoes of memory. They are a bridge, a way for us to remain connected to those souls, even after their physical departure. In his writings, Lewis frequently addressed the mystery of life after death. In The Great Divorce, he explores the idea that those who have gone ahead to the afterlife continue to exist, and that they can, in some ways, still be involved in the lives of those they left behind. This connection, however mysterious, is not bound by time or space. Lewis believed that our relationships with others extend far beyond the physical realm, beyond the grave, and that in some way, the souls of our departed loved ones are always near. To truly understand this, Lewis encouraged us to look at the emotional nature of the dream. He suggested that we should not just view these dreams as fleeting thoughts or moments in our sleep, but as spiritual encounters. These dreams might be glimpses of the spiritual reality that exists just beyond our understanding, a reality where the spirits of our loved ones continue to live on, caring for us, watching over us, and even intervening when necessary. Consider again the example of Carlos, who dreamed of his late brother. In the dream, his brother appeared, not as a fading memory, but as someone still very much alive, someone who had a message to convey. The message, delivered with urgency, warned Carlos about an important decision he was about to make. In the dream, Carlos's brother was persistent, not allowing him to forget the gravity of the situation. This dream was more than a memory. It was a direct message from the spiritual realm, a warning from someone who, though no longer in the physical world, was still concerned for his well-being. This is what Lewis meant when he spoke of dreams as a bridge between worlds. Death does not sever the relationship between the living and the dead. Instead, it transforms it. Our loved ones may no longer walk beside us in the way they once did, but their souls continue to linger in some form, perhaps even more intimately connected to us in the spiritual realm than they were in life. And in dreams, this connection can be experienced as real, as palpable as if the departed were standing right beside us. The spiritual nature of these dreams is underscored by Lewis' belief that the dream world is not an isolated realm, but one that is intertwined with God's presence. In Mere Christianity, Lewis writes about how God works in mysterious ways, using everything in his creation, including our dreams, to communicate with us. When we dream of a loved one who has passed, it is not simply a product of our grief or longing. It is potentially an encounter with the divine. Lewis often emphasized that we must remain open to God's messages, especially during times of grief and mourning. In such moments, we are vulnerable, and this vulnerability can become a conduit through which God speaks to us. Whether it's a message of comfort, guidance, or even caution, Lewis believed that dreams about the deceased are one of the ways God reaches out to us in our moments of need. This view stands in contrast to the more conventional understanding of dreams as merely psychological events. While it is true that dreams can be influenced by our subconscious, Lewis urged us not to dismiss them entirely as such. Instead, he challenged us to consider the possibility that some dreams are not simply figments of our mind, but are infused with divine meaning. He pointed out that the world of dreams has a deeply spiritual dimension, and in that realm God's voice can be heard just as clearly as in the waking world. For many, this idea can be difficult to grasp. We live in a world that emphasizes the tangible, the measurable, and the scientific. The idea that dreams could carry a spiritual message, a message from beyond the grave, seems foreign to the modern mindset. But C.S. Lewis, ever the thinker and the spiritual guide, encouraged us to look beyond the material world. He believed that, in dreams, God speaks to us in ways that transcend our understanding, using imagery and symbolism that may initially seem puzzling, but which, upon reflection and prayer, can reveal deep spiritual truths. Take, for example, the case of Anna, who dreamed of her deceased mother. In each dream, Anna's mother appeared troubled, as though she was trying to convey a sense of urgency. Anna was about to make a major financial investment, one that could potentially lead to great loss. At first, she did not understand the significance of the dreams, but after praying for insight, Anna realized that her mother's anxiety was a warning, urging her not to proceed with the investment. She heeded this warning and in the end avoided what could have been a devastating financial mistake. This, again, is an example of how the spiritual realm can intersect with our waking lives. Lewis believed that dreams such as Anna's were not just coincidental or random. They were purposeful, carrying with them messages that, when properly interpreted, could protect us, guide us, and help us navigate the challenges we face. By paying attention to the details of the dream, the emotional tone, the actions of the deceased, the symbolism present, we open ourselves to God's guidance and discernment. For Lewis, the key was always prayer. When we experience such dreams, he urged us to pray for understanding, to ask God to help us see what the dream truly means. Prayer, according to Lewis, is not just a way to comfort ourselves, but a means of connecting with the divine, seeking clarity and wisdom in moments of uncertainty. Not every dream about a loved one who has passed is one of peace or comfort. Sometimes these dreams are warnings, messages from the beyond that carry urgency, urging us to pay attention to something important in our lives. C.S. Lewis, ever the insightful observer of human experience, recognized that dreams could also serve as divine alerts, warning us of potential danger, guiding us away from harm, or even directing us toward a crucial decision. In the Screwtape Letters, Lewis delves into the spiritual struggle between good and evil. Through the letters of the senior demon Screwtape to his nephew Wormwood, Lewis shows how the forces of darkness can influence our thoughts and actions, often in subtle ways. But in Mere Christianity, Lewis also emphasizes that God, in his infinite wisdom, uses every part of our existence, including our dreams, to communicate with us. Dreams about the departed can sometimes be those very means through which God reaches us, warning us of threats we may not yet see. Take, for example, the story of Marcos, who dreamed of his deceased father. In the dream, his father appeared, troubled, his brow furrowed in concern. Marcos' father urged him to reconnect with his estranged siblings, something that had been weighing on Marcos' heart for years. The dream was not peaceful. It wasn't a simple reflection of his grief or nostalgia for a loved one. It was a warning. Marcos' father, though no longer of this world, was urgently calling him to action. Marcos had been distant from his siblings ever since their father's death, and the dream served as a wake-up call, a reminder that reconciliation was necessary, not just for peace sake, but to restore family unity. After some reflection and prayer, Marcos reached out to his siblings, reconnecting with them and healing old wounds. In doing so, he found peace within himself, knowing that he had acted on the message his father had conveyed. This is the kind of dream Lewis saw as deeply spiritual. It was not just a passing thought or a product of grief, but a direct divine message that carried with it a profound call to action. The urgency in Marcos' father's tone was clear. This was not a moment to ignore. This was a time for Marcos to change his course, to act on the message, and to heal the rift within his family. In moments like this, when a loved one appears in a dream with such clarity, it is essential not to dismiss it or chalk it up to the workings of the subconscious. Lewis would urge us to stop, reflect, and listen. We must ask ourselves, why did this dream occur? Why did the deceased person come to us now? Is there something in our lives that requires attention or change? If so, it is important to respond, to act, and to ask God for clarity and guidance in understanding the message. The key to understanding such dreams, according to Lewis, lies in paying close attention to the emotional tone and content of the dream. Was the deceased person anxious, troubled? Were they persistent in conveying a particular message? In the case of Marcos, the urgency was unmistakable. His father's troubled appearance and his insistence on reconciliation were signs that this dream was not to be ignored. It was a warning, a call to action. Another important aspect of dreams that Lewis addressed is the emotional state of the person in the dream. If the deceased person seems at peace, it might be a sign that their soul is in rest, that they have found resolution. But if they appear troubled, anxious, or insistent, it may be an indication that something is amiss in our own lives. Perhaps a decision we need to reconsider or an area where we need to pay closer attention. This is why Lewis always emphasized prayer when interpreting dreams of the departed. Through prayer, we open ourselves to divine understanding, asking God to illuminate the meaning of the dream and guide us toward the appropriate action. Prayer invites God into the process, allowing His wisdom to guide us as we discern the significance of the messages we receive in our dreams. When we dream of a deceased loved one who seems to be warning us about something, Lewis would suggest that we do not immediately act on the dream without first seeking clarity. Prayer, reflection, and seeking guidance from others are vital steps in the process of discerning the meaning of the dream. The spiritual messages we receive in these dreams are often subtle and layered, requiring careful attention and interpretation. For instance, consider the example of Anna, who dreamed of her late mother, warning her about a financial decision she was about to make. Anna was preparing to invest a large sum of money, and in the dream her mother seemed anxious and distressed. At first, Anna was unsure whether the dream was significant, but after praying for insight, she realized that the warning was real. She reconsidered her decision, avoided the investment, and soon discovered that the opportunity would have led to financial ruin. Just as Lewis believed, this dream was not simply a memory or a subconscious manifestation of grief. It was a warning, a spiritual intervention that allowed Anna to avoid danger and make a more informed decision. Dreams like Anna's and Marco's show us how powerful and purposeful our dreams can be. They are not just a reflection of our emotional state, but can be tools through which God communicates directly with us, offering us protection, guidance, and the opportunity to align our actions with His will. Dreams about deceased loved ones can also serve as reminders of God's continual care for us. They remind us that we are not alone, even in the darkest moments. Just as God provided guidance to the Israelites in the wilderness, He can provide us with the clarity we need when faced with important decisions or uncertain times. And sometimes this guidance comes in the form of a dream, a message from beyond the grave, urging us to take heed and act accordingly. When we experience dreams about loved ones who have passed away, there is often a deep sense of wonder and mystery that follows. What is the purpose of these dreams? Why do they come to us? And what should we do with the feelings and insights they stir within us? C.S. Lewis, in his reflections on the spiritual realm, emphasized that such dreams are not mere coincidences, but often profound moments that can reveal deeper spiritual truths. The key to understanding these dreams lies in prayer. Prayer for clarity, for wisdom, and for divine guidance. Lewis often spoke of prayer as an essential tool in discerning God's will. Prayer, he wrote, is not simply a ritualistic act or a way to seek comfort in times of trouble. Prayer is a way to engage directly with God, to invite His presence into our lives, and to seek His guidance in every area, including the interpretation of dreams. Dreams about the deceased can carry powerful messages that are sometimes direct and sometimes subtle, but always worth considering. Through prayer, we open ourselves to understanding the deeper meanings of these dreams. In his writings, Lewis referred to prayer as a kind of spiritual communication between us and God. It's through prayer that we align our hearts with God's will, allowing His wisdom to guide us as we reflect on the messages we receive in our dreams. When we dream of someone who has passed away, whether the dream is peaceful or troubling, prayer is the first step in determining its significance. Lewis believed that prayer doesn't just provide us with comfort, it is an act of discernment, a way to listen for the voice of God in the midst of our dreams. One powerful example of this comes from the story of Laura, who frequently dreamed of her late father. In each dream, her father appeared, holding a notebook, a symbol that she did not fully understand at first. At first, the dreams seemed to be little more than comforting memories of a man she had loved deeply. But as the dreams continued, Laura began to realize that there was a message within them, a message that was waiting to be uncovered. After several nights of the same dream, she began to pray for insight, asking God to help her understand the meaning of the recurring image of the notebook. Through her prayers, Laura remembered a request her father had made before his death. He had asked her to continue writing down her childhood memories, a project she had set aside many years ago. In that moment of prayer and reflection, Laura understood that the dreams had not simply been a manifestation of her grief. They were a reminder from her father, a spiritual nudge to honor his memory and complete the work he had asked her to do. This realization brought her a sense of peace, as she recognized that the dreams were more than just fleeting memories. They were invitations to act, to continue the legacy her father had left behind. This is the kind of understanding that Lewis hoped to encourage. Dreams about the deceased are not just sentimental recollections or emotional reflections. They can be calls to action. They can remind us of things we may have neglected, invite us to resolve unfinished business, or guide us toward a path we might have overlooked. But in order to understand these messages fully, we must approach them with prayerful hearts, seeking God's wisdom and clarity. Prayer, Lewis taught, is not just for the moment when the dream occurs. It is an ongoing practice, a continual seeking of God's guidance. When we pray about dreams involving the deceased, we are not only asking for understanding, we are opening ourselves to the possibility that these dreams are not merely psychological events, but divine communications. The act of prayer invites God into the process, allowing Him to guide us in interpreting the messages we receive. Another key point Lewis emphasized is that prayer does not always result in immediate answers. Sometimes, understanding comes gradually, through continued prayer and reflection. The meaning of a dream may not be immediately clear, but by persistently seeking God's guidance, we allow His wisdom to unfold over time. In this way, prayer becomes an act of trust, a way of relying on God's timing and His perfect understanding of our lives. Consider the story of Teresa, who dreamed frequently of her late grandmother. In each dream, her grandmother appeared calm and at peace, surrounded by a beautiful garden. At first, Teresa was puzzled by these dreams, unsure of their meaning. But after praying for guidance, she began to realize that the dreams were not just memories of a loved one, but messages of comfort. Her grandmother, in a peaceful garden, was offering her reassurance during a difficult time in her life. The dreams reminded Teresa that even though her grandmother was no longer physically present, her spirit still lived on, offering her peace and encouragement from beyond. Teresa's story is an example of how prayer can help us unlock the deeper meaning of our dreams. Through prayer, she was able to see that her dreams were not just figments of her grief, but spiritual messages from the other side. Her grandmother's peaceful presence in the garden was not just a comforting image. It was a reminder that love and peace endure even in the face of death. For C.S. Lewis, prayer was essential in every aspect of life, and particularly when it came to interpreting dreams. Prayer allows us to align our hearts with God's will, opening ourselves to the possibility that our dreams about the deceased are more than just subconscious reflections. They are opportunities to hear God's voice, to receive His guidance, and to learn important lessons that can shape our lives. As Lewis wrote in Letters to Malcolm, prayer is a means of participating in God's divine plan, a way of inviting His presence into the details of our lives, whether those details are mundane or deeply spiritual. Through prayer, we not only seek understanding for ourselves, but we also intercede for the souls of those who have passed on. As Lewis explained, praying for the deceased is a way of continuing our connection with them, offering them peace and support as they journey in the afterlife. When we pray about our dreams of the departed, we not only seek clarity for ourselves, but also honor their memory, entrusting their souls to God's care. When we dream of someone who has passed away, we often feel the dream is significant. But how do we understand its true meaning? What are the symbols or emotional states within the dream telling us? C.S. Lewis believed that understanding these dreams requires us to pay attention to the smallest details, the mood of the dream, the actions of the deceased, and the symbols that appear within it. These elements are not arbitrary, they hold meaning, and with prayerful discernment, they can offer us vital spiritual guidance. Lewis often spoke of the importance of paying attention to the symbolism in dreams. Symbols, he believed, have a way of conveying truths that go beyond mere words. They bypass the logical mind and speak directly to the heart and soul. In his reflections on spirituality, particularly in The Great Divorce, Lewis explored how our spiritual lives are often shaped by the unseen, by the hidden symbols and meanings that reveal themselves to us through the mysterious world of dreams. A dream about a loved one is rarely straightforward. It is rich with meaning waiting to be discovered. Take, for example, the image of a garden in a dream. In many cultures, gardens symbolize peace, renewal, and spiritual growth. If a loved one who has passed away appears in a dream surrounded by a garden, this could symbolize a state of peace and rest in the afterlife. Lewis would suggest that such a dream might be conveying the message that the deceased is at peace, and that they wish the dreamer to know that they are in a place of spiritual rest and fulfillment. On the other hand, if the dreamer finds the garden neglected, or if the deceased appears troubled, the symbols may be urging the dreamer to pay attention to unresolved issues. Perhaps there are emotional wounds that have not yet healed, or actions that have been left undone. In these cases, the dream could be a call to the dreamer to reflect on their own life. Are there relationships to mend, or unresolved regrets that need to be addressed? The garden, in this case, may represent not just peace, but the work of spiritual renewal that is needed in the dreamer's own life. Lewis encouraged us to look beyond the surface of the dream and ask ourselves, what is the emotional state of the deceased? How do they appear? Are they joyful, peaceful, or anxious? Their emotional state in the dream could provide important clues about the state of their soul in the afterlife, or about their desires and intentions regarding the dreamer. In A Grief Observed, Lewis reflected on his own dreams of his late wife, Joy. In these dreams, Joy appeared both joyful and sorrowful, a complex mixture of emotions that mirrored his own deep sorrow and longing for her. These emotional nuances, Lewis believed, were not merely products of his subconscious mind. They were reflections of the deeper spiritual realities at work. The emotions expressed in the dream were not just about the past, but about the present, and perhaps even the future. They were messages of ongoing love, of grief that had not yet fully resolved, and of a connection that continued beyond death. The emotional tone of the dream, then, becomes a vital clue in understanding its significance. If the deceased appears happy and at peace, it may be a sign that they are at rest, that their soul is in a good place, and that they are no longer burdened by the struggles of life. But if the deceased appears sad, anxious, or distressed, it may be a sign that there are unresolved issues, or that they have a message to convey, perhaps one that requires the dreamer's attention. A dream of a deceased loved one is often not just a simple memory or wish fulfillment. It can be a reflection of the emotional, spiritual, and relational dynamics that still exist between the dreamer and the departed. Lewis would encourage us to consider the depth of our own emotional state as we interpret the dream. Is there something in our life that we are avoiding or neglecting? Are we holding on to unresolved grief or guilt that needs to be addressed? Another critical element in interpreting dreams about the deceased is the specific symbols that appear within the dream. These symbols can be subtle, requiring careful reflection to decipher. For example, a dream of a loved one holding a book or a journal might symbolize unfinished work, a call to complete something that was left behind. If the deceased is surrounded by light or in a place of beauty, it may signify their spiritual peace and the divine presence that envelops them. On the other hand, if the dream is dark or unsettling, it may point to a need for healing, forgiveness, or reconciliation. Lewis was keenly aware of the power of symbols, not just in dreams, but in all aspects of life. In Miracles, he discusses how reality itself is full of symbols and signs that point us toward the divine. He suggests that the spiritual realm often communicates through symbols, which, when understood, help us recognize deeper truths about ourselves, our relationships, and our connection to God. Dreams about the deceased are a prime example of this. The symbols and emotional cues within the dream are not random. They are part of God's greater plan to reveal something important to us. When we experience a dream about someone who has passed away, Lewis would urge us to look at it with a sense of reverence. It is not just a random occurrence, but a spiritual event, an opportunity to reflect on the deeper mysteries of life, death, and the afterlife. In these moments, we are called to prayerfully consider the emotional tone and the symbols within the dream, seeking understanding through God's guidance. Through prayer, we invite God's presence into the interpretation process, allowing Him to reveal the meaning behind the dream. Sometimes the interpretation comes quickly, and sometimes it unfolds over time. But through patience, prayer, and reflection, the dreamer is invited to experience the spiritual connection that still exists between this world and the next. As we seek to understand these dreams, Lewis would remind us that they are not just for us to ponder in isolation. These dreams can be shared with others, trusted friends, spiritual guides, or those who share our faith. Their insights and perspectives can often shed light on details that we may have missed, helping us to understand the dream more fully and to respond appropriately. The more we delve into the spiritual significance of dreams, especially those involving loved ones who have passed away, the more we begin to understand their power, not just as messages or warnings, but as instruments of healing. C.S. Lewis, with his profound understanding of the human soul and its connection to the divine, often spoke of the deep, redemptive power that comes from engaging with these dreams, especially in the context of grief. For Lewis, dreams of the departed weren't just opportunities to gain insight. They were also a means of healing and reconciliation, a way for the brokenhearted to find peace and comfort in their sorrow. In his deeply personal work, A Grief Observed, Lewis writes about the unbearable weight of losing someone he loved so deeply. His wife, Joy. In the aftermath of her death, he was consumed by grief, his mind plagued by questions, doubts, and fears. But through it all, he began to recognize that his dreams of joy were not simply echoes of his longing. They were, in many ways, messages of hope and healing, even in the midst of the most excruciating pain. Lewis had always been a person of deep faith, yet after his wife's death, he struggled with the very nature of God's presence in his life. He questioned the silence he felt, the absence of joy, and the uncertainty of his own grief. But through his dreams, he began to feel a sense of connection that transcended his physical reality. In his dreams, Joy was still present, perhaps not in the way she once was, but her presence was still there, offering him a sense of continuity, a reminder that love does not end with death. These dreams were not just comforting, but transformative. They helped Lewis work through his grief, allowing him to process his emotions and move toward a place of spiritual healing. He began to see that in some way, these dreams were part of God's healing process for him. Through them, Lewis came to understand that even in grief, there was a deeper, more eternal connection that could not be broken. Love, he realized, was not bound by death. It was a bond that remained even in the face of loss. For those who experience dreams of loved ones who have passed away, these dreams can be powerful healing tools. They allow the dreamer to experience a sense of connection with the deceased, a connection that may have seemed impossible after their passing. This sense of connection can bring immense comfort, helping to alleviate feelings of loneliness and sorrow. It serves as a reminder that our loved ones are never truly gone. They remain with us, spiritually, guiding us and offering their presence in ways that we might not fully understand. In The Weight of Glory, Lewis speaks about the deep longing that humanity has for reunion. Reunion with God and reunion with loved ones who have passed. For many, dreams of the deceased can be seen as a glimpse into that reunion, a brief yet powerful reminder that the bonds of love remain unbroken by time or space. These dreams can offer healing to the soul, not by erasing grief, but by giving it a spiritual context. They help us remember that our loved ones are at peace, that they are still watching over us, and that love is never truly lost. One of the key ways in which dreams can offer healing is through reconciliation. When a person dreams of a deceased loved one, especially one with whom they had unresolved issues or conflict, these dreams can provide a sense of closure, an opportunity for the dreamer to resolve old wounds. For example, in the case of Marcos, who dreamed of his father urging him to reconnect with his estranged siblings, the dream served not only as a warning, but also as an invitation to heal broken relationships. When Marcos reached out to his siblings, the family was able to reconcile, and he found peace within himself. The dream helped to bring healing, not just to him, but to his entire family. For many, reconciliation doesn't always come so easily. Dreams of the deceased may highlight unresolved conflicts, missed opportunities, or unhealed wounds. In these cases, Lewis would encourage the dreamer to take the opportunity to pray for reconciliation, either with the deceased, through prayer for their soul, or with others in their life. Lewis believed that these dreams are not only spiritual moments of connection, but also calls to action, calls to make right what has been wronged, to forgive and to heal. The act of reconciliation, according to Lewis, is not just for the benefit of the living, but for the deceased as well. As he wrote in Letters to Malcolm, prayers for the deceased are an essential part of the Christian faith, helping to support the souls of those who have passed on. In this way, dreams of the departed serve as an invitation to both spiritual growth and healing. By recognizing these dreams as opportunities for reconciliation, the dreamer can experience a deeper sense of peace, knowing that they have taken steps to heal the relationships that remain in this world and the next. Lewis also emphasized that the process of healing through dreams requires patience. Dreams, especially those that involve loved ones who have passed away, are not always immediately understood. They require reflection, prayer, and often a willingness to sit with the discomfort of grief and longing. But over time, as the dreamer continues to pray, reflect, and engage with the message of the dream, healing begins to take place. This healing may not come in the way the dreamer expects, but through prayer and patience, God's presence becomes evident, guiding the dreamer through their grief toward peace. For C.S. Lewis, these dreams were not just about receiving messages. They were about transformation. They were about healing the soul, finding peace in the midst of sorrow, and understanding that, even in grief, God's love is ever present. Dreams of the departed serve as reminders that, though death may separate us physically from our loved ones, love itself transcends death. These dreams offer us a glimpse of the eternal, a reminder that the bonds of love are unbreakable. As we reach the final chapter of our journey through the spiritual landscape of dreams, particularly those involving loved ones who have passed, we find ourselves at the very heart of C.S. Lewis' teachings on death, love, and the eternal connection that transcends this life. For Lewis, death was not the end. It was simply a passage, a step into another realm, a realm where love remains unbroken, where the bonds of affection and care extend far beyond the physical world. Dreams of the departed are powerful reminders of this eternal bond, offering glimpses of the connection we continue to share with those who have gone ahead. In his seminal work, The Great Divorce, Lewis explores the idea of heaven and hell, of the afterlife and its implications for the soul. He presents a world where the choices we make on earth have eternal consequences, but also one where the bonds of love are never severed by death. In fact, he argues, it is precisely the love we share with others that defines our existence, both in this life and the next. Dreams about loved ones who have passed away, Lewis suggests, offer us a window into this deeper reality, an affirmation that even in death, love persists. For many of us, grief is a deeply personal and isolating experience. We may feel that the death of a loved one has created an insurmountable chasm, one that separates us forever from those we once held dear. But Lewis' understanding of love tells us something different. Death, as he saw it, does not sever the spiritual connection that exists between us and those we love. Instead, it transforms it, deepening the bond in ways we may not fully understand in this life. In dreams, the departed often return to remind us of this truth, offering messages of comfort, guidance, or even warnings. The emotional tone of these dreams can vary, but the message is often the same. Love does not end with death. If the deceased appear peaceful and serene, it may be a sign that they are at rest, that they are in a place of spiritual peace. If the dream carries a sense of urgency or anxiety, it may be a sign that the deceased have a message for us, something we need to pay attention to in our own lives. In every case, these dreams are an invitation to remember that our loved ones remain with us in spirit, watching over us, praying for us, and offering their continued presence, even if we cannot see them in the physical realm. This eternal bond of love is not just a theological concept for Lewis, it was a lived reality. After his wife's death, Lewis struggled with the absence of joy, but he also began to recognize that death had not taken away the love they shared. It had simply transformed it. He came to believe that love is a force so powerful that even death cannot undo it. In his dreams, he felt that connection, that bond, and it helped him navigate the deep sorrow of loss. These dreams were for him a form of spiritual comfort, reminding him that the love they had shared was still present, still active, still a part of him. This is the deeper spiritual truth that dreams of the departed often convey. They remind us that our connections with others, our relationships, our bonds, are not confined to this physical world. The love we give and receive continues to exist, even after death. These dreams serve as a powerful testimony to the enduring nature of love, a love that is not bound by time or space, but that reaches into the eternal. As we reflect on these dreams, Lewis would encourage us to embrace the reality they present, not as a fleeting momentary comfort, but as a profound spiritual truth. Death may take our loved ones from us in body, but it cannot take away the love that binds us together. That love continues to shape us, guide us, and protect us, even when our loved ones are no longer physically present. In many ways, the dream of a loved one is an invitation to deepen our relationship with the spiritual realm. It is a reminder that we are not alone, even in the darkest moments of grief. Through prayer and reflection, we can come to understand that these dreams are not just personal, emotional experiences. They are spiritual gifts. They offer us comfort, healing, and a reminder of the love that surrounds us, even in death. In Mere Christianity, Lewis writes about the nature of heaven as a place where the eternal realities of love, goodness, and joy are fully revealed. In that realm, all the fragmented, broken pieces of our earthly existence are made whole. And while we are still here on earth, we experience glimpses of that eternal love through our dreams, through our relationships, and through our connection to the divine. Dreams of the departed are part of that larger reality, reminding us that we are not separated by death, but are instead part of a larger ongoing spiritual journey. As we reflect on the lessons Lewis has taught us throughout this journey, through dreams, through grief, through the bonds of love, we are called to live in the hope that love is eternal. We are called to trust that our relationships, our spiritual connections, will not end when we breathe our last. They will continue, transformed and deepened in the presence of God. As we close this exploration into dreams and their deeper meanings, it is important to reflect on the lessons we can apply to our lives. C.S. Lewis teaches us that love transcends death. It endures, even in the face of grief and loss. When we experience dreams of our departed loved ones, we are invited to remember that love is eternal, that we remain connected beyond this life. Through prayer, discernment, and reflection, we can find comfort, healing, and guidance in these dreams. Let us cherish the spiritual bond we share with those we have lost and trust in the love that continues to guide us. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences with dreams of loved ones who have passed away. Have you ever felt that deep, unbroken bond through a dream? Share your reflections in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring content from C.S. Lewis.